There's a 30-foot wall of sand in southern Morocco. Put a stock WR450F at the bottom and it digs a trench. The rear wheel spins, the front just plows, and you stop. In 2004, a group of testers rode a different WR at that same wall. It climbed straight to the top like the sand wasn't even there. Same engine and frame, but only one big change. This bike drove its front wheel too. It was called the WR450F2 track. It's the only two-wheel drive dirt bike Yamaha ever put in a showroom. Fewer than 450 were built. Most went to Europe and Australia. Almost none reached the US, and the people behind it weren't Yamaha's engine guys. It was Öhlins, the suspension company Yamaha owned back then. They chased this idea for about 15 years. Here's how it worked and why you can't buy one new today. The idea didn't show up overnight. Öhlins had been poking at two-wheel drive in secret since the 80s. In 1998, they built a two-track YZ250, a two-stroke motocross bike, and put it to the test in Sweden. A year later, a two-track TT600R won a rally in Sardinia. Then came WR426F rally bikes. At one desert race, David Frétigné and Jean-Claude Olivier went 1-2 on them. So by the time the WR450F2 track reached the public in 2004, this system already had trophies on the shelf. Anyone who bought one was getting a proven race winner. Start with the problem it fixes. A dirt bike makes all its power at the rear wheel. When the rear hooks up, you drive forward. When it breaks loose, that power turns into roost and noise. In deep sand, in mud, on a snotty climb, the rear just spins and digs a hole. All that brap goes nowhere. Two-wheel drive grabs some of that wasted power and sends it to the front instead. Most people picture a shaft or a drive shaft running up to the front wheel. That's how the American Christini system does it, with chains and a shaft. Öhlins hated that idea. A hard mechanical link to the front means you have to rebuild the frame and the front end around it. It's heavy and it looks like a mess. So they went fully hydraulic. No shaft to the front, no long chain up there, just fluid in a hose. Follow the drive and it's simple. There's a second sprocket on the gearbox countershaft right next to your normal chain. A short chain runs off it, sealed in an oil bath. That chain spins a small hydraulic pump that sits on top of the gearbox. The pump pushes fluid through two thin hoses. Those hoses run down the front of the fork leg. They feed a hydraulic motor built inside the front wheel hub. Fluid goes down one hose, spins the hub motor, and comes back up the other. On the way back, it passes through a filter and returns to the pump. It's a closed loop, nothing sprays out. Why go to all that trouble with hydraulics? Because hoses bend. A chain to the front needs a stiff, straight path. A hose just roots down the fork like a brake line. So Öhlins could bolt this onto a normal WR without cutting up the frame or the forks. It also stayed small. Stand 10 feet away and the bike looks stock. You only spot a fatter front hub and two skinny hoses running down the fork. There's one more piece in there worth knowing about. A small gas-charged accumulator sits in the system and works like a cushion. It stops the front drive from slamming on all at once. So when the front kicks in, it feeds in smooth instead of grabbing like a light switch. That's part of why riders said it felt natural and not like a gadget fighting them. Now the clever bit, and it's the part that keeps this thing from looping you out, the pump speed is tied to the gearbox. The gearbox speed is tied to the rear wheel, so the front wheel can never spin faster than the rear. Read that again in your head. When the rear has grip, the front just freewheels. It rolls along and does nothing. There are sensors in that front hub watching for rear wheel spin. The second the rear starts to slip, the pump spins faster. More fluid moves, pressure climbs, and drive kicks into the front wheel. The more the rear slips, the harder the front pulls. Then, as the rear finds grip again, the front eases off and hands control back. It sorts itself out. No button, no switch, no map to pick. The rider does absolutely nothing. And it never sends much. Yamaha capped the front at around 15% of the engine's power. The rear wheel is always the boss. That cap is on purpose. Two-wheel drive has a habit of making a bike want to run straight. When both ends pull, the bike fights your turn and tries to stand up and take the wide line out of a corner. Push too much power to the front and it would do exactly that. 15% is just enough to drag you out of trouble without wrestling the bars out of your hands. Picture it on two different surfaces. On hardpack, where the rear grips fine, the front barely does anything. The bike feels close to a normal WR. Now pointed at a sandhill. The rear starts to spin, the pump wakes up, and the front digs in and pulls you up the face. You get drive at both ends exactly when you need it, and only then. So what does it feel like to ride? The front wheel pulls instead of getting shoved. Point it and the bike goes there. Think about a flat, off-camber corner with no berm. A normal front tire wants to wash out and tuck. The two-track front is being pulled forward, so it bites and tracks the line. Riders said changing lines got easy. You aim and it follows. Loose climbs that would spit a stock bike sideways just got dragged up the hill. Hang the front on a log, lean forward to plant the tire, and the bike pulls itself over. Engine braking felt stronger too, since now both wheels are tied to the motor when you chop the throttle. Remember, this is a suspension company's bike, so it didn't just get the drive system. It came with an Öhlins fork, an Öhlins shock, and an Öhlins steering damper. The people who built the best suspension in racing got to spec the whole bike around their own trick front end. And it raced for real. In 2004, David Frétigné lined up for the Dakar Rally on a WR450F2 track. He was a rookie there, a three-time French enduro champion, taking his first crack at the big one. His bike was the smallest thing near the front, a 450 in a field of 660 and 950 cubic centimeter monsters. Then he won the opening stage, then he won two more. He was the first rider in about 20 years to win a Dakar stage on a bike under 500 cubic centimeters, 18 days, over 11,000 kilometers of desert. He finished 7th overall and first in the 450 class. A little enduro bike with a driven front wheel beat almost every big factory rally bike in the race. It was the dirt bike version of the Audi Quattro, the rally car that showed up with all four wheels driven and made everyone else look slow. And it wasn't a one-off. Frétigné came back in 2005 and did even better. 5th overall, first in the 450 class again, so the tech didn't just work once, it worked on the hardest race on Earth 2 years running. Then comes the bill. The system added weight, around 5 to 7 kilos, depending on who put it on the scale, and here's the catch, a lot of that weight sits in the front hub right at the wheel. That's unsprung weight, and it's the worst place to add mass. It makes the front feel heavy and slow to turn in. Lofting the front over a rock or a root got harder. A stock WR snaps up and flicks side to side. The two-track felt planted, but lazy to move. In open desert and sand, that trade was worth it. In tight, slow, technical stuff, where you're wrestling the bike around trees, that heavy front was a handful. The testers were honest about it too. Their verdict was simple. In hard, twisty going, most serious riders would still grab a lighter normal bike. They only really wanted the 2 AWD in bogs, deep sand, or on a beach. So even the people who loved it saw where it belonged and where it didn't. The gearing was locked too. On a normal bike, you swap the rear sprocket to change your gearing for a track. You couldn't really do that here. To keep the front and rear matched, you'd have to change all 3 sprockets at once and get the math right. Yamaha basically said leave it alone, so you rode the gearing it came with. Like it or not. There was one more oddball. Grab a big handful of front brake and you could stall the motor. The front wheel is tied to the drivetrain through that pump. Lock it up hard and you can drag the whole engine down with it. New riders had to feel that out. Now the real reason it died. Money and mindset. The two-track cost about 20% more than a normal WR450F. It was heavier, it needed babying. You had to change the hydraulic fluid, keep an eye on the hoses, and pray the pump stayed healthy. On top of that, it was a competition-only bike, with no easy path to own one, and it barely came to the US at all. Then there was the crowd it was built for. A lot of hardcore riders took one look at a driven front wheel and called it training wheels. They didn't want the front helping. They wanted to steer with the throttle, break the rear loose on purpose, and control the slide with their body. To those guys, two-track felt like it sanded the edges off the fun. And here's the part that stings. Even the race team let it go. Frétigné kept winning his class, but by 2006 his factory Dakar bike was running without the two-track hub at all. The system that beat the big bikes got quietly unbolted. Yamaha wasn't the only one who blinked either. KTM had been testing its own all-wheel drive bike around the same time. That one never reached a showroom floor either. The whole idea just ran out of air, so it didn't sell. Yamaha built one run, about 445 bikes, and shut it down. Öhlins kept grinding on two-wheel drive until around 2007. They even built a two-wheel drive R1 street bike and clocked it 5 seconds a lap quicker on a wet track. None of it made it to a showroom floor. The program ended and two-wheel drive on a production bike quietly disappeared. If you want one now, the hydraulics are the scary part. A leaky hose or a tired pump means a rebuild, and the parts are hard to chase down. Buy one with a dead pump, and you've got a very expensive paperweight until you fix it. The idea never fully died, though. One small American shop still builds bolt-on two-wheel drive kits for dirt bikes, but no big maker has put two driven wheels in a showroom since. Here's where it lands. The tech was real. It climbed the sand wall. It won its class at Dakar twice. It did everything Yamaha promised. And it still died because the riders it was built for didn't want it. Fewer than 450 of them exist. And the ones left keep getting more valuable. The one dirt bike that proved you can drive both wheels. And you'll almost certainly never throw a leg over one.